You could have been a monster. The disembodied voice is harsh, and though it echoes over and over in the tunnel, it still sounds unmistakably female. Tell me something I don't already know, Anakin mumbles under his breath, exhaling as he pauses to wipe the sweat from his forehead and check the wound on his side. It's not bleeding anymore, but it still stings horribly if he moves wrong. Shortly after his arrival on Korriban, he'd been attacked by a pack of Sith hounds. One Tukata had managed to get a swipe across his side, and its claws had been long enough to pierce through his armor. He shudders with revulsion at the sickening threads of the dark side curling around him. He uses the dark side freely now, but it feels oppressive here. If only it were easier to pass the Sith trials. No one has a map of this ancient temple, so Anakin has been meandering around, hoping to find the center for the past. Force knows how long it's been. After killing most of the Sith hounds, he'd successfully retreated into the temple, leaving the rest to yap outside with displeasure. After entering into the inner sanctum, he'd chanced upon the opening leading to the bowels of the building, with no small amount of help from the Force. A token is needed to prove your worth, but to take, one must also give. Dooku's words echo in his mind. The Count wouldn't explain anything more, because apparently the temple itself would decide the rest. That sentence was the only guidance he could offer. Bound in chains, beaten, enslaved, murmurs another voice. And that's the other thing. The deeper Anakin gets into the temple, the more the Sith spirits harass him. The attacks on his mind is something he needs to learn to resist to pass the test. He knows this, but that doesn't make it any easier. It's only been 1 week since they defeated Sidious on this very same planet. He hadn't heard the spirits then, but apparently they'd been watching. They saw the fight. They know his weaknesses. Chosen? For what? A spirit mocks him. It pauses dramatically. Say, chosen for falling. Anakin curses silently. They're intentionally trying to annoy him. Apparently they've gotten bored without anyone to needle or harass. He won't give them the pleasure of knowing how much they're unsettling him. Cautiously opening a durasteel door using the Force, Anakin sighs when he sees the room, or pathway beyond, is pitch black. Already the light streaming in from outside is scarce, but he's been reluctant to use his lightsaber because it will give away his position. He'd rather sneak up on whatever may lay within. It's spooky, isn't it? Chuckles the spirit, and Anakin feels his lightsaber move. He instinctively grabs the hilt so none of them can run away with it. He hadn't thought it possible initially, but apparently they can still use the Force. Sighing, he ignites the lightsaber, holding it up to light his path as he steps through the doorway. It slams shut behind him, and he jumps slightly. Ghostly laughter reverberates through the room, hinting as to its massive size. Whatever this place used to be, the structure is still magnificent, Sithly or not. As he's moving cautiously along the floor, Anakin senses that the Force is moving strangely in here, almost as though it's above a nexus point. Nexus point. Perfect. This is just where he needs to be. Now, how does it find a way to the lowest levels? Put away your lightsaber. This voice is deeper than all the others and holds an air of authority to it. Anakin knows that resisting wouldn't end well, so he reluctantly extinguishes the blade, gripping it tightly in his mechanical hand as the cavern is once more bathed in darkness. There's a heartbeat of silence which is so acute Anakin can feel it. Do they want him to do something? Tell me what you want, he hisses finally, voice vibrating with a suppressed fury. No, it's fear. They're powerful, and they're persistent. A week ago, Sidious was in his mind. He's not exactly comfortable around Sith spirits who are trying to wear him down mentally. "Listen," a female voice whispers, so Anakin does. At first he doesn't hear anything, but then, after a moment, he hears something. He can't quite make out what it is until it grows louder, the sound resonating throughout the room. It sounds oddly like a respirator. "What?" Anakin begins when he hears the sound of a lightsaber igniting. Whirling, he sees a red blade gripped in the black glove of a cyborg. He blinks in confusion, especially when he recognizes the armor. It's his armor. "Young Skywalker," the vocoder rumbles, lightsaber casting an eerie glow behind Vader. "This is insane," hisses Anakin, throwing out an arm in disbelief. "What are you doing to me?" "It is not me, but rather yourself," Vader replies cryptically. "Search your feelings. You know the truth in your heart." Anakin might as well have been told that he's a shape-shifting non-human. "What truth?" he manages to demand, keeping his voice steady. "What you are," Vader answers promptly. "What you were, what you could be, everything that has been and has yet to be." Okay, that does not sound like something he would ever say, so Anakin decides he can safely assume it's either a Sith spirit trying to confuse him or an actual vision from the Force itself. He opens his mouth and closes it again, staring warily at the apparition before him. "Explain," he tries cautiously. "There's something here. Something. He's not sure what, but something seems off. Whatever it is, it's being masked by the sheer power located in this area." "Everything you have done has led you to this place," the cyborg answers, as the respirator continues with its rhythmic cycling. "In another time, in another world, in another universe, you would not be here." Obviously. Anakin already knows that every choice can change the future. Always in motion, the future is, as Yoda always says. "I understand." He nods slowly, the feeling that he's missing something never leaving him. "You do not understand," Vader snarls, stepping closer, somehow seeming even more menacing than he had a moment before. "Foes are friends. Friends are foes. Death and suffering. Pain and loss. Visions do not the future make." Irritation surges through him. "Would you stop talking in riddles?" he snaps. The respirator cycles once, and just like that, Vader is gone. Everything is as quiet as it was before. If he was supposed to learn or understand something from that apparition, he didn't. "Everything in due time," the female's voice breathes almost mockingly. Fine. He's not going to play their game anymore. He's going to find the opening, which he knows is located somewhere in this room. Anakin lowers himself to floor, forcing himself not to think about what things might be on it as he completely opens himself up to the Force. The dark side thrums through him, nearly irresistible with its power. But he knows better. If he bows to it, he will submit himself to slavery. That won't happen. It takes longer than he expected, but he finally senses the trapdoor located several feet away. He doesn't need light to see anymore. He has the Force to guide him. Rising to his feet, Anakin resolutely strides towards it, prying it open with the Force and leaping down. He lands with practiced skill before slowly venturing into the unknown. The darkness is thicker here, however that's possible. It's almost suffocating in its intensity, and the strength of the dark side down here is enough to nearly take his breath away. Even the Sith spirits seem unusually subdued. Instead of taunting or mocking him, they remain completely quiet with only the occasional murmur. It's as though they're hanging back, afraid of something within the depths of the temple. "I have been waiting for you." The words are filled with a cold malice and dark satisfaction, but it's not the tone that makes Anakin jump. It's the sound. It had been completely quiet. Even the sound of his boots was oddly muffled, until that voice spoke. Him, of course. "It wasn't my intention to make you wait," Anakin retorts, trying to keep his voice from shaking. He must hear Anakin's heart pounding. This isn't real. It can't be real. He's dead. Anakin is certain he is. It's another test, one of the many the Temple has given him. The resulting chuckle is far from fond. So much power, he muses thoughtfully. And to think you could have become the most powerful in the galaxy, my boy. No, Anakin will not stand here listening to reminiscing about the past. The past will stay in the past. You don't believe that, Sidious mocks. The past is why you are here. Anakin flinches back at the sensation of something probing at his shields, the icy fingers stabbing like pinpricks into his mind. "That is why you are mine," he adds. "No," snarls Anakin, his anger swelling up like a tidal wave and crashing out into the Force. "No, I am done with your games. I killed you, and you will not continue to mock me." A sigh. One which is filled with condescension, as though Anakin is some child which needs to be coddled. It's barely audible as Anakin clenches his fists. "My boy, you cannot truly believe me to be gone," Sidious responds. Each word pierces Anakin like an arrow. "You know in your heart." Those words are an echo of Vader's, and Anakin can't help but wonder if it's intentional, or another form of mockery. "Where you belong. Everything you have done has led you to this place," Sidious echoes, the words sending a chill down Anakin's spine. "You are only forestalling the inevitable." Fear grips him in a vice. The words sound like the Sith's, but Anakin knows they can't be. He doesn't sense another living presence in here with him. Stupid. Of course he doesn't. Sidious's body is dead, but perhaps his spirit is not. Is this to be his test, facing the spirit and proving he can return unscathed? That doesn't seem right either. When Sidious had latched onto Anakin's mind, as he shook it away, he felt it slipping away and disappearing. But the question remains, is Sidious truly and completely gone? It's the uncertainty which is scaring him more than the potential implications. When he realizes that, he forces himself to take a step back from his emotions and look at the bigger picture. Even if Sidious's spirit is still here, it doesn't matter. He is here to complete his trials. That's all. Up to this point, everything has been working to stop him. To succeed, he has to overcome his fear. Easier said than done, but recognizing that he is in fact afraid is the first step. He'll never be able to forget the feeling of that cold presence trying to dominate his mind and smother him out of it. For a moment, he'd been afraid that his body would cease to belong to him. That invasive action has left him scarred and shaken, though it's not something he likes discussing. Obi-Wan tried to get him to open up a few times, and though they did talk about it somewhat, it didn't nearly do enough to restore Anakin's confidence in his own mind. "I can feel the conflict within you," Sidious purrs. "Give in to your hate." The words strike a chord deep inside Anakin, and he makes his decision. "Sidious is dead," he states decisively, "and his memory will haunt me no longer." The air thickens before tangible shifting around him. A glow suddenly appears at the far end, and looking towards the end of the room, Anakin gets the impression of looking at an altar of some sort. "You are right, of course," Sidious's voice agrees, filled with malice. "But you are still making a grave mistake, young Skywalker. Or should I call you Lord Vader?" Anakin scoffs, turning to see a hooded being watching him from the shadows. The clothing and posture all resemble Sidious, who is dead. It must be a vision-like being, just like Vader was earlier. He's tired of fearing what Sidious did to him. "I am the chosen one," Anakin hisses, yellow eyes narrowing as he draws in the dark side, lashing out towards the apparition. It flickers before disappearing as though it was never there. Anakin stands frozen for a moment, looking at the place where the apparition had been, before shaking his head firmly and putting it out of mind. If anything, the Force seems to be more peaceful around him, and he senses that his trial is nearly complete. Of course, the dark side could draw on his fears to make him face them. Had he failed, he doubts it would be anything nearly as peaceful as this. He can now feel a strong pull towards the front of the room near the altar, so he slowly approaches. In the middle of the altar, he spies the source of the weird bluish glow. It's a crystal of some sort which is somehow being powered enough to light up the room. The tug Anakin feels in the Force leads him straight to the altar. Aside from the odd light source, he sees a yellow kyber crystal laying there innocently.
Slowly, he reaches out, mechanical fingers brushing over it. He jerks back in surprise when he realizes that it's calling for him. "You feel it, don't you?" One of the Sith spirits whispers. Somehow, they'd flooded into the room without his even realizing it. Maybe they were always here, but he was too distracted to notice.
"The crystal is calling your name," another agrees. "It's yours."
"I have a crystal," he retorts, stubbornly refraining from touching it again. "I don't need another." And he doesn't. If he takes this one, his lightsaber will be gold.
Derisive laughter echoes around him. "You cannot refuse your own crystal," a spirit taunts. "It's your token," adds a second.
"It's languished here for centuries," a feminine voice concurs, "waiting for you."
Their sudden change in attitude makes Anakin wary. Before, they were taunting him, but now they're encouraging him. Are they trying to lead him into a trap, or did he really pass all the trials? He doesn't think he should ask them. Hesitantly, he picks it up, surprised how it hums happily in his palm. Maybe it's simply the Force Nexus, but this kyber crystal seems far more alive than any he's ever encountered before.
"Make your sacrifice." The words this time are spoken in a commanding tone, and Anakin understands. The spirits are an integral part of the Sith trials. They try to hinder and stop the would-be Sith Lord from completing the journey, but upon completion, they bring an ancient relic which is to be taken in exchange for something else. There are so many treasures down here that Anakin can readily see how each apprentice could find something.
But now, the question is, what will he sacrifice? Under no circumstances does he want to leave his blue crystal here. They probably wouldn't appreciate it either. Actually, they probably would view it as a symbolic disconnection with his Jedi origins. He doesn't want that. That's not what he's trying to do here. His red crystal, on the other hand, would be the perfect choice. He can almost feel it crying softly in his pocket. Because of the torment inflicted upon them, red crystals always seem mournful.
Honestly, Anakin isn't even sure why he'd brought it with him. It's not as though he needed it. Something had told him to bring it, so he did. And he's suddenly grateful. By sacrificing his red crystal, he will symbolically be casting off the old Sith teachings of warfare and accepting upon himself the new ideals to which they are striving. It's perfect. He pulls the crystal out with his left hand, reverently laying it on the altar. For a moment, the room glows much brighter before dimming once more.
"We can't approve of your decisions," a Sith spirit finally acknowledges. "But you have still been proven worthy. Go forth, Lord Vader, and lead your empire."
That wasn't exactly what Anakin had expected, but he quickly banishes the strangeness, slipping the yellow kyber crystal safely into his robes before slowly retracing his steps to return to the outside. Hopefully, he shouldn't have near as much difficulty leaving as he did entering. He really doesn't want to fight off any more Sith hounds or other nasty creatures native to Korriban. He'll have nightmares for weeks, not really, of the giant Sith he saw. Based on his limited knowledge, those dark lizards have a dark side poison within them, and he doesn't want to get tangled up with it. at all.
As soon as he returns to Coruscant, he can find the parts he needs to make his second lightsaber. He's rarely ever fought with two before, because it's not really his style, but he's not the same as he used to be. Maybe in the past one lightsaber was better, but this is a different time now. Two lightsabers, one blue and one gold, will be perfect for him. It could be minutes or hours before he finally stumbles through the opening of the temple. The shadows are growing longer, so he's been inside for most of the day. Well, that would explain why he's so exhausted. First, he needs to get off the planet, so he focuses on returning to the shuttle as expeditiously as possible. He seems to have been marked after passing the trial because nothing bothers him as he prepares to leave the planet for hopefully the last time. Anakin has never felt so relieved to turn on the engines of any ship and take off from the surface, angling up into the atmosphere fast enough that the shield generators have a hard time protecting the ship from damage. As soon as he's in space, he enters the coordinates into the hyperdrive and flips the lever to enter hyperspace. He won't reach Coruscant until late afternoon, which gives him plenty of time to focus on healing his wounds. Making his way to the cabin, Anakin pulls out the first aid kit and sets about stripping off his armor and removing his robes to get a better look at the injury. After getting his side clawed open, he'd fallen to the ground, so before he can attempt to force heal himself, he needs to clean it. The scrapes are fairly deep, but not dangerously so. Once the dirt has been cleaned away, he closes his eyes and reaches into the Force, drawing it close to knit the skin back together. He's not nearly as skilled in Force healing as some, but he's been working hard to expand his powers and reach his full potential. Unlike many other things, healing doesn't come naturally to him, which has only made him work harder. Once the wound has closed over, he applies a Bacta patch. It should be completely healed by the time he returns home. Settling down on the bunk, Anakin sits in a meditative position, slipping into a light trance. He has a lot to think over, and plenty of time to spare. Anakin is unsurprised that only Ahsoka is there to greet him when he arrives in the hangar of the Jedi Temple. For now anyways, they're all living there part-time. Though obviously reluctant, the Council had agreed with Obi-Wan's proposal. "How did it go, Sky Guy?" she asks chirpily, all but bouncing from foot to foot with excitement. "It was okay," he says finally, searching for the right word to describe his emotions. They're still a tangled knot, and he's feeling inexplicably uneasy. Probably just a side effect of seeing Sidious and not knowing if the Sith Lord is still scheming beyond their reach. Just don't choose Korriban as a vacation spot. The spirits probably won't appreciate it. "Spirits?" she squeaks, sounding horrified. "You mean you actually saw them?" "Talk to them, more like," he corrects, shaking his head. "They were not pleasant company. Where's Dooku?" "Waiting for you in the apartment," she replies. "We were going through some Sith texts when I got the message, so I came down here to greet you." "In other words, you convinced him to let you leave," he interprets, smirking. Ahsoka is as used to action as he is. She's definitely not a scholar, and she nearly cried from horror when she learned that Dooku wanted her, and Anakin actually, to help him peruse some Sith texts which had been locked in the library. Why they weren't destroyed is anyone's guess, but Anakin is grateful. Boring though they may be, he has still learned much about ancient Sith customs, beliefs, history, and practices. She gives him an unrepentant grin as they begin walking towards a turbolift to take them to the appropriate floor. Honestly, if it were up to Anakin, he'd go straight to Padme's apartment, their apartment, and relax there. He could use a nap or two. Maybe a distraction is in order. All stray thoughts about fleeing evaporate when he enters the living room of their apartment. It used to be the one he shared with Obi-Wan when he was still a Padawan. But now, since he usually sleeps with Padme, only the other three stay here. Obi-Wan took Anakin's former bedroom, now devoid of all his belongings because they're being kept in his new bedroom, while Dooku is sleeping in Obi-Wan's former bedroom. Ahsoka usually takes the couch unless she's crashing in Padme's guest bedroom. Dooku looks up from his position in an armchair, nodding cordially, a half smile on his face when he sees Anakin. "It's good to see you back in one piece, Skywalker," he greets him. "It's good to be back and out of that Sith heck," Anakin shoots back. "I would have liked a warning about how incredibly persistent and annoying the spirits are there." The Count hums thoughtfully as Anakin drops onto one side of the couch, Ahsoka sitting on the opposite end. "It's different for everyone," he replies at least. "I couldn't tell you about something I didn't know would be a problem. Honestly, I wasn't affected much by the spirits. Perhaps your greater power warranted more attention. Or maybe they just aren't my biggest fans, having killed Sidious and all," Anakin grumbles, thinking back to the possibly Sidious spirit he saw there. "Or maybe they have a personal vendetta against you," Ahsoka grins cheekily. "Someone is very cheery," he mumbles under his breath, glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. She meets his gaze, smirking. "Does it bother you so?" She snips, before dropping the attitude. "You seem bothered by something. What's wrong?" "Something you saw?" prompts Dooku curiously.
Anakin slumps back against the couch, dragging his hands down his face. "I don't know," he answers haltingly. "I wasn't terribly happy about going back there so soon after everything, but it started out okay. Well, okay if you don't count getting attacked by a pack of ravenous Tukata. That went fine. I fought them off and retreated into the temple. That's when the spirits really started harassing me. They mainly talked, tried annoying me."
"I've heard they can do that," Dooku interjects dryly.
Anakin nods briefly before exhaling harshly and continuing the tale. "When I got deeper inside, I saw a very strange vision of myself. I don't know. The figure was wearing my armor anyways." He shrugs. He wasn't making any sense. "When I got into the center of the temple, I saw..." His voice trails off, and he can't hold back the shiver. What appeared to be Sidious' spirit, but I'm not sure if he has one there. "What did he say?" Ahsoka breathes, wide-eyed with dismay. "He said that I belong to him," Anakin admits, eyes skirting away to the floor. But that's not true. He mocked me, saying that he's not truly gone." The silence is so deafening that Anakin is certain he could hear a pin drop. "You only belong to yourself," Dooku assures him at last. "Never forget that." He slowly lets out a breath and nods firmly. "I won't." There's a momentary silence which he finally breaks. "I worry though," he admits. "What if Sidious is still around? What if he's plotting against us?" "Then he is," Dooku states simply. "We'll simply remain vigilant. If he tries to act, then we'll stop him again." "You say it like it's so simple," mumbles Ahsoka, tipping her head to the side. Anakin snorts in agreement. "So tell me, O great and wise Lord Tyrannus, how can we destroy a Sith spirit?" Dooku's lips quirk upwards in amusement, his only reaction to the teasing words. "I don't know, but it's definitely something I'll look into. I don't think that destroy is the right word, but we should be able to find ways to block him." The surge of relief that hits Anakin is staggering, and he tries not to let it show, but from the knowing look in the Count's eyes, he knows the elder man saw. "Well, that's as good a place to start as any." Anakin doesn't think he's successful in shrugging it off, but at least he tried. "What did you bring back?" Dooku inquires, thankfully changing the topic. Right. He'd almost forgotten with his stress over Sidious. He reaches into his pouch and withdraws the yellow kyber crystal. It hums a quiet, happy tune as it rests in his palm. Ahsoka sucks in a breath and leans closer to get a better look. "Is that yellow?" she whispers, looking up at him with wide eyes. "Gold kyber crystals are not common, especially on Korriban," the Count comments. "Are you going to build a second lightsaber?" Ahsoka wonders. Anakin stares at the crystal in his hand for a long moment, before nodding. "Yes, I think that's what I'm supposed to do."